So a few weeks ago, I made a video on my vocal processing chain, but what I didn't show you was the parallel processing I also have on the vocal at all times, and I didn't show you the vocal effects tracks that I use to create certain kind of moments in the vocal with reverbs, effects, throws, distortion, whatever. Let me show you what the lead sounds like without any of that stuff. Let me mute these effects tracks, and let me mute the parallel tracks. So here's the vocal without any of that parallel processing.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
And here it is with the processing.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje.
And now let's see without the effects that I put.
Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas.
Boring, right? So let's add back those effects now.
Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas estar.
Nice, right? So those parallel tracks actually add a lot of life, a lot of depth to the vocal, nice fatness to keep it kind of present on top of the mix. And those effects tracks just add kind of certain moments of kind of excitement throughout the song. Let's dive into the video and let me show you exactly what I'm doing. What is up, my friend? Jacob here with another video to help you record better, mix better, and work better. Today I'm bringing you part 2 of my vocal processing chain. This is a video I did a few weeks ago going over some of the plugins I use on my actual vocal tracks, but what I didn't show you was the plugins I'm using in parallel with the vocal and the certain effects that I'm using to create moments throughout the song. Before we dive into all that though, I want to tell you about something very, very special. If you're just getting started in audio and you're not sure what you need, what to buy, how much it costs, I've written up a free PDF gear guide breaking down exactly what you need in your studio, how much it costs to get you recording yourself or recording your clients in your brand new studio. The PDF is absolutely free. Go to www.mixwithjacob.com/gear guide. Pick that up. Let's dive into the video. So let's take a listen to this vocal again without any of that parallel processing. Let me just mute these guys down here.
Yeah, magnífico, místico.
Let's solo it.
Paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
Right? Vocal sounds good, it sounds fine, sounds clean, but it's lacking a little bit of presence, especially in the context of the mix. I really want some kind of parallel chains to give a lot of beef to the vocal to make it stand out. So here it is with the parallel chains.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
Right? Just adds a lot of presence and a lot of beef to that vocal. Let's hear it again in context with the track now.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje.
Let me bypass it.
Me encanta tu físico. Soy astronauta.
Right? So not only do I have a boatload of plugins on my vocal to give me the sound I want, but I also have 3 parallel chains that are working with that vocal to kind of give me presence and fatness to have that vocal sit and cut through the mix. Let me show you the 3 parallel chains that I'm using. First, I have a vocal saturation track. And this is quite simply a Decapitator plugin that I'm using in parallel, fully wet because it's on a parallel track. And I'm just doing a little bit of drive saturation and I'm filtering. I don't want too much of the low end and I don't want much of the high end. In fact, I'm using the tone knob to kind of shape the sound to be a little bit of a fatter distortion. And when it blends in with the vocal, it gives me like a nice presence in the low mid to kind of help the vocal cut through. Let me show you kind of what it sounds like just with the saturation and not with the other parallel chains.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta.
Let me mute it.
Tu físico, soy astronauta.
So you can see it's adding a lot of beef to that vocal. Let me make the loop a little bit longer so we hear it better.
Yeah, magnífico.
Turn it back on.
Místico, el paisaje.
See the
Me
fatness?
encanta tu físico. Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar.
See, without it, it's a little bit thin. It still sounds fine, but it's a little bit thin. And the saturation really helps bring in some of that low harmonic that we all love to hear in vocals. Let me exaggerate the distortion so you could really hear kind of what it's bringing.
Yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje. Me encanta tu físico. Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar. Si no...
So you see the shape of the distortion with the tone and the filtering really just has kind of this low end presence that it brings into my mix. The next parallel chain I have is parallel compression. For the parallel compression, I'm using a UAD Distressor plugin. It's on a 6:1 ratio. It's got no distortion parameters, nothing like that. It's just strictly clean compression, and it's hitting quite hard. Let me show you.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
You see, in any given moment, it's actually hitting 8 to 10 dB of compression, which is a lot, but I'm only using it very sparingly with my vocal sound. You can see that I have the output set to 2. And what I like to do is drive the plugin, bring the output all the way down, and then bring the output up and blend it. Because for some reason, I'm very OCD, I like to have my parallel processing chain faders at 0. So I like to use the plugins to do kind of the volume adjustments.
Yeah, yeah,
so this is 0 output.
Místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
And you see, as I bring it up,
Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar.
Now we're getting a little bit intense, but you could hear the energy that it's bringing to the vocal just kind of dynamically. Now the settings on this thing are kind of no secret. I just kind of play with it and see what I like. The release is set quite fast because I want it to compress but release as quickly as possible. I don't want it to stay compressed for too long, just to add kind of a punch. And the attack is set kind of medium, so it's not eating the vocal right away and still kind of remaining punchy in the compression. Let's hear it again. From 0, I'll blend it back in and exaggerate it once again.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
Nice. Let's hear it in context with the song.
No voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar. Si nos toca aterrizar de forma inmediata, no perdemos control. Porque sé que tiene.
So the sweet spot I kind of like on this is maybe 2 or 3 on the output, just so that I can kind of feel the compression in the vocal, but not hear the pumping as much. I had it around 2 for this mix, but if you're using this method, you could try blending more or less throughout the song, throughout the mixing process, and see kind of what you like. Let's hear now without the parallel compression and with it.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico.
So this is with.
Místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu
Without.
físico. Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar.
So similar to the saturation track, it's adding a lot of fatness, a lot of presence to the vocal that otherwise is kind of missed. Let's hear it now with both the saturation track and the compression track.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico, místico, el paisaje, me encanta tu físico.
When I take it out, it's like the vocal completely disappears.
Y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar. Si nos toca aterrizar de forma inmediata.
So that's it, parallel saturation and parallel compression to kind of bring a big fatness to the vocal in the mix. Now the third parallel processing chain that I have is a very subtle one, but it's basically a stereo effect on the vocal, just to kind of spread the lead vocal out just a little bit so that it's not quite mono, and it helps kind of give wideness and energy to the vocal. Let me show you the plugins I'm using on that parallel track. I have a Soundtoys Microshift, which is on a preset called Lead Spread Mixed. Let me bypass the other 2 plugins on that track and exaggerate it so you can kind of hear what the stereo effect is doing.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico, místico.
So you see, it's quite intense, right? You don't want to have it that loud at all. If I put it back to 0, now it's still very loud, and that's because I've bypassed the compressor and EQ that I had after the fact, but that's kind of the effect we're going for. Kind of a little bit of a slappy, top-endy kind of spread. Next plugin in that same chain is the RComp, and this is basically going to be doing some compression and leveling. So I have the gain down all the way to -14. Like I said before, I like to use the plugin's gain controls to kind of do the blends of the parallel chains instead of using the faders. As for the settings on this comp, I have a -5 threshold, I have a 4:1 ratio, so quite a bit of compression, and -14 gain for the moment, which I'll show you if we exaggerate it what it sounds like. The attack and release times, I want it to be super quick and super fast on the release. I just want it to grab and let go as fast as humanly possible, kind of keep it as subtle as possible within the mix.
Yeah, yeah, magnífico.
So you see, it's not even doing any compression, in fact. It's just kind of controlling the peaks when there's some like hard articulations in the vocals so that the spread doesn't kind of let loose on the sides so you don't actually hear it as much as feel it. Next plugin in the chain is the Pro Tools stock EQ. I'm just taking out some of the kind of lower mid-range around 500 but super wide, because those frequencies in widening effects can tend to kind of muddy up the sound. So I want to cut some of that out, quite heavy, around 6 dB, and then a little boost in the top end to kind of shine it up on the sides. And like I said, it's so subtle, you're not really going to hear it unless I exaggerate it. Right? Now, let's go back to my compressor and let's gain up so you can hear the effect it's doing. See, already at -6, it's way too much. Let's bring it back down. So I had it set at about -14, and that seems to be kind of the sweet spot for me. It's just kind of doing a little bit of spread, but I'm almost not even hearing it. I'm more feeling it. Now, let's take a listen to everything all together with the other two parallel tracks, the saturation, the compression, and the widening.
Magnífico, místico, el paisaje.
Now let's take them out.
Tu físico. Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar.
So you can see how it's bringing life to the vocal and just kind of helping it sit on top of the mix, right? All that parallel saturation and compression is adding so much harmonic content to the vocal that it's just kind of blasting its way through a dense mix and sitting on top, but naturally and good sounding, right? So that's it for my 3 parallel vocal chains. But on top of that, I'm also using some effects on separate tracks. Let me kind of break those down for you. In my mixing template, I always have 6, in this case I duplicated a few to make some more effects, but I always have 6 vocal effects tracks. Now these tracks are initially in mono, and they're forced into stereo tracks by using certain plugins that create stereo width. Let me show you an example so you kind of see what the workflow is. I have all these tracks ready to go up here with some effects already on them. There's auto-tune so that the vocal doesn't sound any different tuning-wise from the actual lead vocal. Then there's a stereo spread on all of these. It just takes that vocal, kind of puts it in a room and makes it stereo so that when I add those effects, it's nice and wide. And then on each track, there's some different effects. So here there's a bit of saturation on this track. On this track, there's saturation. There's like some sidechain happening. On this other track, it's just a straight up reverb, super basic, default preset on Valhalla. Here, there's a different reverb with a delay right before it. So each of these tracks kind of have a series of effects which change on every mix. They always start with nothing. And as I'm inspired for a certain effect, I'll drag a clip to that track, add the effects I want for those certain moments. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say we listen through this verse.
Magnifico.
So let's say on Magnifico, on the co, I want to put a reverb throw and a delay, just to create like a kind of a special moment in that vocal. Let's see, what do I have on this track here? Right? Little delay, very simple. Let's see what I have on this track. I'm even rediscovering what effects I used on this because they change every time, so I absolutely have no idea. So we're gonna kind of discover it together.
Magnifico, místico.
Ah, so there I have like a pitched high delay. This next track I have like a half note delay, which in this case is a little bit weird maybe on that word. What about this? Let's see.
Magnifico, místico.
Ah, little ping pong, filtered ping pong delay. This one. That's just a simple reverb throw with the Valhalla. Here I have. This is kind of like a double / delay thing, I guess. Like a sidechain kind of delay. On this particular part, it doesn't really serve a purpose. That's kind of like a crazy delay for a certain part. And here I must have like a sidechain kind of reverb. Yeah, so that's probably for the chorus. I'm using like a sidechain to create energy. So you can see the workflow that I have is a bunch of effects tracks ready to go, which are mono tracks turned into stereo using plugins. And then at any given moment, I grab a clip of the vocal that I want to effect or add delay to or reverb to, and I just copy it and I go paste it on the track, and then all my effects are there on that certain word. It makes the workflow so smooth, so at any point when I'm mixing, I hear something that I want to add to the vocal, I just copy the clip, put it up there, and that's it. Done. Super easy, right? So for example, check out this section of the verse. I have a couple different effects going that are kind of adding some cool dynamics to that vocal part.
Soy astronauta y no voy a ningún lugar donde no vayas a estar. Si nos toca aterrizar de forma.
So that's it. I just have a bunch of vocal effects tracks that are kind of ready, and at the beginning of a mix, they actually start out empty. And whatever I'm inspired to do on certain parts, I copy the clip of the vocal, I put it up there, I add some plugins, blend it in. I use clip gain in Pro Tools as a function to kind of judge the volume of the effect, right? So let's say this one, if I put it back to 0 on the clip gain, see, it's a bit intense, right? I don't want it to be that loud, so I'll just use clip gain to kind of put it down a bit and blend it in. See, that's better. So that's it for my 3 parallel vocal chains that I use: saturation, compression, and widening. And I've also shown you my vocal effects tracks that I use to create certain moments within the song of reverb, delays, or any kind of effect really. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know down below in the YouTube comments, what parallel vocal chains are you using in your mixing? Are you using saturation and distortion like I am? Are you using compression? What else are you using? I'm always looking for new techniques, new tools, so let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to pick up that free PDF gear guide if you're just getting started in audio and you're not sure what to buy or how much it costs. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Peace.